Friday night.
It is finally Friday night. This seemed like such a long week.
It did.
When you're sore, the time goes slower.
Oh man.
Don't you think?
Oh, for sure. I think that, yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. Everything just sort of slows down, the body, everything, just the way you're thinking. But boy, I tell you, I know even mentally, my mental clarity this week has not been very good. And I do admit to being a little on edge at the beginning of the week. So
Yeah, it's interesting. I ended up staying an extra day in St. George.
did you?
Mostly because I messed up the accommodation. When I originally qualified a long time ago.
Yeah.
And so as soon as I qualify, I book. And I was like, well, it's always a Saturday, Sunday race. Women go Saturday, men go Sunday.
Yeah.
So, I just booked through till Monday, figuring I'll race on Sunday. I don't want to drive home after the race. And we raced on Saturday. So it was good though, because we didn't come back till Monday morning, and I was able to have a little bit more kind of chill time. Although my wife wanted to go hiking, and man, my legs were not too happy hiking.
No. Do you know which hike did you do?
We just did, there's a trail near Laverkin called the Confluence. Do you know when we sat out at that coffee shop?
Yep.
It's actually in that gully.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Along the river. And then the next day we went up to Red Hills, which was spectacular. But I should have known by the name Red Hills.
Yeah. You didn't want anything to do with it.
I didn't want anything to do with it. Yeah. But it was good. But yeah, it's interesting, when you're sore from a race, your temper is a little bit higher. You're just a little bit annoyed, a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And when you can't get out of the car.
Yeah.
But that's the nature of.
And there are so many more bad drivers when I'm edgy.
Yes.
Of course, it's just me being a little too judgmental while I'm driving, but
that's right. No, you're exactly right. And we can talk a little bit about the race last weekend. And obviously, it was both of us have already talked about this and agreed that was one of the craziest races we've ever been associated with.
Right.
Both from the difficulty of the course, in particular that run course, and the weather.
Yeah.
I still.
So let's recap, because maybe not everyone's watched or stayed up.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
We did the Ironman 70.3 World Championship up in St. George, Utah. And it was, we qualified for that at different races. Was this actually one of your qualifiers, or did you roll?
I actually don't even know where I originally qualified, because I think this was actually originally qualified in Augusta in 2019.
That might be right, because then you had an opportunity, you qualified again, but you were able to move one of them to New Zealand, which is now also
back in St. George.
So it's a little confusing, but so we both qualified at different races.
You qualified in Hawaii, correct?
I qualified in Hawaii. I did get a roll down spot, and I did benefit from them adding in more slots, because I did not have a great race in Hawaii, time wise or position wise. So, but to have the opportunity to race in our backyard in St. George and do a world championship is so neat. In fact, the week before, when I was up there, I was just, loving that people were enjoying, other athletes were enjoying going around, taking pictures of the course and St. George. And, here we live in this area, and it is so beautiful. So it really is a pleasure to share that with other athletes.
Yeah, it's, St. George itself it's a spectacular area. We started going up there when we were doing, triathlon 10 years ago or so. And back then I was like, we should buy a little condo up here, because I love it. And now you can't afford one, but back then we could have.
Yeah.
And it is a spectacular place.
Yeah.
It really is. And, they were touting it the land of endurance. And, I agree. Like, what a place to be for endurance sports.
No, fantastic. So it's really interesting going up there that last week, it was hot. And we were
Yeah, just driving up on Thursday, it was hot.
It was, and we were all talking about how to manage the heat during, especially the run, but also even leading up. In fact, when our podcast last week, we were talking about wearing the long sleeves and whether or not that was going to be a good thing or if that was going to hinder performance. So it was interesting.
We were even talking about, remember, what we were going to do standing around before the race at 8 in the morning in the sun. I was like, oh, are we going to get overheated before we even get in the water?
That's right.
Well, yeah.
That changed pretty quickly.
That you never know what's going to happen in St. George.
I don't remember who it was that first said something about, oh, there's a chance of rain. But it happened even after I dropped off my run gear. So it's a 2 transition. And so we had to drop our run gear off down in downtown St. George and then go drop our bike gear off up at Sand Hollow. And so I remember dropping off all my gear thinking it's going to be a hot day for a run. So I added, extra water hydration system in there to be able to use that. Obviously never used it. So, but then somewhere along the way, someone said, hey, it might be raining on Saturday. I'm like, no way.
Well, the weird thing was when we were, around 4 o'clock setting up our bikes, a windstorm came through.
Yeah.
And in the desert, when the wind comes, that usually means something's going to change.
Oh, that's right.
And so then I was like, well, I look at the weather and say, 40% chance of rain. Well, that means 60% chance of no rain. Right. Like, and I go with the odds. So I'm like, it's not going to rain. We're going to be fine.
But this is a point-to-point course. And so, it may be 40% chance rain in one area, which is this is the way it played out. But on the other aspect of the course, the other side of the course, it may be sunny and beautiful. So, all right. So we woke up Saturday morning and it was a nice temperature.
It was nice. It was probably mid 60s.
Yeah.
No wind. The lake had a little chop on it, but I mean, nothing to really write home about. Yeah. I was like, oh man, this is going to be a good day.
Yeah, that's right. It looked like we were set up pretty good. So
it's really interesting. I was talking to another athlete that, he bikes about the same as I do. And we're like, what do you think for a bike split? I'm like, man, if we have a really good day, catch a little bit of a tailwind, maybe 218, maybe 220. We're both like, yeah, that's about right. Nope.
No.
That's how quickly it changed, right? It changed from basically, being able to do whatever you wanted to problem solving and trying to make the best out of a bad situation.
That's right. No, you're spot on. And so what's interesting is you talk with someone who did the race and it really depends on what they had to deal with based upon when they started.
Yeah.
And so the start of athletes took at least 3 hours to get everybody out on the swim. And you talk with people who started the race at 9 o'clock. They had a very different experience than those who started at 8 o'clock.
Completely different.
Oh.
And the funny thing is that I was actually trying to look at some like the weather data. Mm-hmm. Some people on their Strava, they have like that updated weather.
Yeah.
And then I watched some of the weather afterwards, like the front that came through. If you got to a certain point on the bike, because the way the wind was coming, you actually got a tailwind.
Yeah, right.
When others were going against that, literally going the same direction.
Yeah.
Right. Going towards the west. Some people were getting a tailwind. Some people were getting a headwind. It just mattered what side of that cell you were on.
Yeah. And then even
amazing.
Trying to get out of the swim and get out of T1, that was a whole nother challenge there for a lot of athletes.
Yeah. So yes, depending on where you were, you got different winds. Yeah. And the winds in some areas, some people were clocking 50 to 60 mile an hour gusts.
Yeah.
You got hail. I think I got hail.
Yeah.
Torrential rain at points.
Yep.
And then I hit Snow Canyon. I don't know about you, but it cleared up, and I got a tailwind going up Snow Canyon.
Yeah.
The one place you don't want a tailwind is when it's starting to get a little warmer.
Yeah, Snow Canyon was fine for me. But
Yeah.
yeah, and both of us had the thought that the race directors were going to stop the race.
Yes.
But
When I
at
saw
the
the
same
lightning,
time, yeah,
I saw, I was seeing lightning not too far in the distance. And I'm like, well, they're going to have to stop the race. We talked about this last week as well.
yeah.
But then what are they going to do with the people?
No, there was nowhere I could take cover where I was. So it was, yeah, you were on your own. If they were stopping the course, I would just be sitting on the curb getting poured on anyhow. So
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And then, the interesting thing to me was I thought it was pretty much over, the rain. And then, you were, I think this is right at the time when we came to the same point in the race course. I think it was about mile 9, 10 on the run. And it just started pouring hard again.
St. George was not done with us.
I came up behind John, and normally I would be able to see John no problem, but I had my visor on, my head was down because the wind and rain was coming, and all of a sudden I hear John, "Hey Ted," I'm like, "What?" I had already passed you. I honestly wasn't even seeing people because it was just coming down so hard. It was amazing.
Yeah, the St. George just really chewed us up and spit us out, and then the athletes later, which tended to be more the females because of the way the start was.
They had it even worse.
It all cleared up and it was hot and sunny and humid, which really would have been.
All the water just evaporated from the road.
Yeah.
And where's it going to go? Like, oh man, just, we were sitting around watching at the end, and we're watching some of the females going from their first lap to their second lap. And both of us were like, man, we got to find some shade. This is uncomfortable standing around watching them.
Oh, that was tough.
What a crazy race. And, John, honestly, I don't know how you feel about it, but like, I feel a real sense of accomplishment that we were able to finish on a day that was kind of epic. This was our epic October in September. Well,
there were only just over 100 DNFs.
That blows my mind.
Which is really amazing. And so that's credit to a lot of people for putting up with some tough conditions. Now, where you and I were, we got those tough conditions near the end of the bike, or the last third of the bike. And in my mind, I'm like, okay, I just got to get through Snow Canyon, and then I'm on the run, and I'm going to be okay at that point. I can't imagine what people were thinking when they're going out of T1 and being hit with that storm, which moved over us and then moved east and hit them over in T1 later on. And so you're starting the bike ride with that type of wind and storm. Boy, congratulations to all them for saying, okay, I'm going to stick it out.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't even imagine getting out of the water and just be like, do I really have 3 hours in me to fight this?
Is this what it's going to be like for a while? And so, that's pretty neat that people really worked at it and got it done. And on top of that, a tough course, especially the run.
Well, the bike course is also challenging because there's no flat.
Yeah.
Right. You're either going up or you're going down.
That's right.
But that run course, I always have said that the St. George run course to begin with, the normal run course, is the hardest course.
Yeah.
Well, they found a way to make it harder.
Yeah, boy, I tell you, you head out and that long upgrade on diagonal, that's painful, even though it's just a small grade, but you're going uphill. And then you hit that big steep uphill, and then it flattens out. And then what was the grade on the downhill section?
Well, it varied up from between 10 and 14%.
That's steep.
And that was for, the half a mile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was interesting I don't know if you end up watching the pro broadcast, but the pros, I mean, they were just arms flailing, slapping their feet down. Mm-hmm. John, we're fortunate that we live in an area that is a little bit hilly. Mm-hmm. I could have trained more downhill.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if you live in Florida?
Oh, no.
There's no opportunity for you to train downhill.
That's right.
Right. You can get on a treadmill and go uphill.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But how do you train the downhill?
Oh, that downhill.
And
it really was, the last mile was really a 10 to 14%, but still a steep grade, even going all the way down to the turnaround. And then, ultimately the finish, because it was 2 loops.
And wet on our second loop. Wet.
It
And
was
there was people that fell. I heard reports of people that they fell on the road because their feet slid out. Because we're all wearing racing shoes, right? They're not the grippiest shoes, and then the paint on the road was very wet. So it was awesome.
So I saw one of the challenged athletes that had 2 prosthetic limbs, and that portion of the hill was so steep, he actually went down backwards, because the prosthetic limbs just are not designed to go down that type of steep hill. I didn't see any of the hand cyclists go down the hill, but that would have been treacherous as well. And I read on one athlete's report, she actually went down zigzag, which I'm like, oh, that was actually a really good idea. Yeah, you go a little bit longer, but boy,
I'd be worried someone was going to run me over from behind, though, because some people were going down with reckless abandon. Someone said something as I was running down, and like a fan, and this kid, I call him a kid, he's probably 25, just comes hammering by me, and I look over at them and I'm like, must be nice not to care about your legs.
That's right,
because I care about mine.
All right, so now that's going to get us right into our topic, which downhill running is a great way to do some serious muscle damage.
Yeah, it is. Every protocol in the labs, when you want to actually create muscle damage, you put them on a downhill running protocol.
Exactly.
It's like the perfect way to cause muscle damage.
Yeah, it is. So it's a lot of contraction of the muscle, and you're lengthening the muscle of the major muscles of the lower extremity, and that lengthening while the muscle is trying to contract, that's an eccentric contraction, and we know that causes muscle damage.
Yes, and so that takes us really quickly into our topic of recovery, and this is a really hot topic, right? And it's been hot for, I don't know, 5 years or so now. It's been in the athletic training world, everyone is looking for the next best thing to help their athletes recover, and there's a lot of ways to look at recovery, right? Is recovery the ability just to train again tomorrow, or is recovery actually rebuilding and adapting? And because those are 2 different things. And there's even, you can break this down into central versus peripheral. So central being like your central nervous system recovery, peripheral being your muscle recovery. And then there's also ways to look at it. Well, can I decrease your pain so then you can train again? Does that actually maybe blunt the training effect? And so there's a lot of science in this area, but there's a lot of unanswered questions about the science in this area. There is some really sound stuff though. And today we're going to talk about one really sound piece of advice for recovery, and one that has been, I think, in my opinion, overhyped. And so the really sound one we're going to talk about is sleep. The overhyped one is cold water immersion.
Okay.
So let's start talking about sleep. And so let me ask you number one question. On Saturday night, how did you sleep?
I would say I slept reasonably well, but not great. I certainly woke up early. And I was in my trailer. So, but yeah, it was, and I know after a race like that, I typically don't sleep well because, one, I don't eat well after a race. And so I've got that whole nutrition aspect going on. But then, just the exertion of being out exercising for a long period of time, I never expect to sleep well after a race like that.
Yeah, I never sleep well after a race. I usually don't sleep well before the race. I usually don't sleep well after the race. And the interesting thing is that as far as all of the pieces of recovery, sleep is a cornerstone. So I put into the chat a little pyramid. I'm going to share.
Yeah, let me set that up. Sorry, go ahead.
I'm going to share where I got that from. So do I have the ability to share now?
Yeah, you should.
Okay. So this is called the recovery pyramid.
Okay, I see it.
Can you see that okay? So here, obviously the things that are at the bottom are bigger, right? They have more impact, more nutrition, or more science behind them. So we're going to talk about sleep and downtime, and then cold water immersion, which I disagree with this position. And I'll explain why I disagree with it. But let's talk about sleep and downtime first. So good quality sleep, quantity of sleep, good sleep routine, but not just sleep, but also mental recovery and relaxation. I think this is a really interesting one that is often missed, is that mental recovery and relaxation.
Yeah.
And remember, this is not just from recovery from a race. This is every day. This is recovering from session after session after session. And we've talked at length about one of the big issues with triathlon is trying to train for 3 sports, is where do we fit in the recovery?
Yeah.
And I guess one other thing before we really dive deep into this is there's recovery and there's adaptation. And when we exercise, we're trying to stimulate an adaptation, right? And if we don't allow time for our bodies basically to rebuild and adapt, we are just going to keep digging ourselves into a deeper and deeper hole. Right. And the research is pretty good on this, is that sleep is number one and sleep is king. And but when we talk to high level athletes, it's often something that is not done well. Some of the early data on this, the company Whoop that does the wristband thing, and they measured sleep, and when they looked at it in Major League Baseball and in the NBA, they were seeing that these guys are getting, like, during the season, I think they were averaging just over 6 hours a night of sleep. And these are professional athletes. And once they became aware of how much they were sleeping, and then they did things to mitigate it, batting averages went up, free throw percentage shooting went up. And there are so many studies that show by increasing sleep, you increase performance, and you increase it by increasing recovery, whether that is that central, in the central nervous system, or if it's peripheral where it's the muscles. Either way, you're going to enhance it. John, is this what you're seeing as well?
Oh, very much so. And I really like that you talked about the mental recovery as well. And that's so important to have a good sleep pattern for that. And we all know that. I mean, we all, if you miss a couple of nights of good sleep, a little on edge, and it's hard to avoid, and your mental clarity is just not as good. I liked, actually, one of the review articles one of our grad students sent us, Bernice, where they talked about this model for improving sleep.
Yes.
And it was obtain adequate total sleep duration, which obviously makes sense, and that's what you're speaking to there. Maintain healthy sleep habits, which is good, because now not only can you work on one night of sleep, but now you got to string these consecutive nights together. And then this one is probably really good for triathletes specifically, is minimizing impact of travel or sleep disruptions or events that will cause sleep disruptions. So I like this model, and I'm guilty of not spending enough time to make sure I've got good sleep habits right from the beginning.
Yeah. So in athletic training right now, we're calling this sleep hygiene. And one of the things that I teach my students is if you have an athlete that is injured and wants to recover faster, which they all do, right? Anyone that's injured wants to get better faster.
Yeah.
One of the things we want to find out is, tell us about your sleep, right? And I can tell you this, I've talked to some athletes at UNLV that are sleeping 4 hours a night. Right. And they're injured. It's like, well, what can I do to get better faster? Well, number one, let's see if we can increase your sleep. Right. And however that is, if you can get from 4 hours to 5 hours, you're going to improve.
Right.
Right. We've talked about injury stuff before, but that's one of my big things is if you're rehabbing an injury, you have to prioritize sleep because that's when we repair.
Mm-hmm.
So, one of the hormones that gets released in sleep is human growth hormone.
Mm-hmm.
For those of you that don't know, that's a banned substance if you take it exogenously or you take it, via an injection or pill. But we make it ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and it is released in little bursts, like little puffs. But those puffs happen when you're asleep, and the biggest puff happens within the first hour of falling asleep.
Mm.
But you can actually miss it if you don't fall asleep at the same time all the time.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So for example, if you go to bed every night at 10 o'clock, at 11, you get that little puff, the biggest
Mm-hmm.
puff of human growth hormone. So, but if on Friday night and Saturday night, let's say you stay up till midnight because it's the weekend, you actually will miss the biggest piece.
Mm.
So some of the research was actually postulating that an athlete could actually lose all the gains they made in the week by staying up late 2 nights in a row.
Oh, that's interesting. Well, that's that circadian rhythm, depending on if you're in Canada or in the US.
Yep.
It's that natural rhythm that you don't want to disrupt.
Yep. And it's really critical. Like going to sleep time is actually more important than even the wake time.
Mm.
Because when you're in deep sleep, which happens in the first half of the night, that's when more of this human growth hormone and more of the repair happens. The second half of the sleep is more when you have the REM sleep. Mm-hmm. And the REM sleep is real, but it's still very important. It's more vital for memory and making memory and more the cognitive restoration, which is, don't get me wrong, is still very, very important. But if you're talking purely about recovery from like the breakdown of muscle fiber, probably the first half is more important.
Well, but this is why in the academic world there's a lot of neat research on this, is because this is why you don't want to cram the night before a test.
Exactly.
Instead, you want to get a good night's sleep so you have the best test performance that you can have. So it actually bleeds over into this, like we're talking about, mental acuity and this sharpness that you can have with good sleep.
Yeah. And it rolls over from day to day. Like that's the important thing to understand too, is if you don't sleep well for several days in a row, it just gets worse and worse and worse.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. And if the pattern gets messed up, the more it gets messed up, the harder it is to get back into rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really a critical thing to understand. Now, most triathletes I know, they do a decent job of going to bed,
right?
Because they're tired from the training, right?
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I've noticed in the people that I've consulted with is they will wake up early to train.
Yeah, that's right.
And I think that's actually a recipe for disaster in the long term, right? And I get it. Like, hey, coach has me a 6-hour bike ride, and I've got a family. I want to get going by 4 a.m. So at 10 I'm done and I can have my family time.
Mm-hmm.
My question would be, would a 4-hour bike ride have been just as good because you had had more rest and start at 6 instead?
Yeah.
And there's no good research on this yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so it'd be a really hard research study to actually do, but there's anecdotal evidence. And this is coming out of a lot of the stuff from companies like Whoop and Aura that are measuring this stuff. So, I mean, I don't know what your take is, John. I know that you are notorious in the summer for waking up early and getting going.
Well, but I don't wake up with an alarm.
Right. And that's
the majority of the time.
Yeah,
only when I know I need to get up even earlier than I normally do.
Yeah.
Will I make sure to have some alarm, and those are the worst. For me, I don't like having that disruption of sleep at that point. But no,
like you're in a nice deep sleep, and at 5 o'clock in the morning that goes off when you naturally woke up at 5:20.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy stuff, because that actually can mess your whole day.
It can. That's right. And so, but I do, especially in the summer, I do like getting to bed early so I can get up early. But it's a natural rhythm that I get into to be able to do that.
So the other one that I think is interesting is people, like, because I've had people say, well, oh, I'm still hitting my power numbers. Like, it didn't affect me.
Yeah.
But they don't recognize that you can still perform with very little sleep, because we have hormones that are going to kind of kick in, in particular cortisol, right? Our stress hormone can get us a long way, right? But eventually you lose that ability too, or your cortisol level becomes too high all of the time. And then that actually trickles down and makes it more difficult to sleep. Because your body just gets used to producing higher levels of cortisol, which is stimulatory. So, it's a common thing that happens in endurance athletes too. They're like, well, I just wake up at 3:34 in the morning. I can't get back to sleep. Well, that's a sign that you actually have elevated cortisol levels. And it's because you've been basically pushing your body to that end. And it's going to take a long time actually to reset that. Unfortunately.
That's a great explanation.
Yeah.
But if you're going to miss one night of sleep, race night, you're still able to have a good performance, but you can't string those sleepless nights together and still do well.
Yeah, no, it's true. Like the evidence is pretty good on that. Like you can get away with one night. And so then for many people, it's critical, like 2 nights before a race, that they really prioritize sleep that night. Especially like, we go to a race that starts at 6 a.m. and let's say transition area opens at 4:15 or whatever. You got to eat, so you might wake up at 3:45, right? Okay. So we understand that one night you can get away with it. So then 2 nights before, like that's when you got to say, hey, I need to be hit the hay early, and I need to sleep until I naturally wake up, and maybe even force yourself. Like sometimes I'll wake up, 4 o'clock in the morning or whatever. I'll be laying there. I'm like, it's better if I just lay here. Yeah. Be calm, rest my system, right? Rest my neurologic system, keep my eyes closed and still be resting, maybe not sleeping, but still resting, and prioritize that. Yeah. It's coming ahead. Right. Well, and I do have to admit that one of the downsides of sleeping next to transition in my trailer was the noise of the setup of transition. They started early in the morning, and even on race morning, I got woke up by the announcer. So yeah, that's right. That's right. So you need to get a camp spot next time, maybe a little further away. That's right. Put up a little bit more soundproofing. So yeah, can you insulate your trailer a little bit better, or get some headphones? Well, but earplugs. And so you were talking about not sleeping well after a race. So now you've got 2 consecutive nights of poor sleep. And you just did a big exercise session too. That's gotta, what's your reading tell you on how that recovery delayed or interfered? It delays your recovery significantly. So, I've been complaining all week that my legs have been sore. Well, I didn't actually sleep well for 3 nights in a row. I didn't sleep the night before the race. The night after the race, didn't sleep well. And my legs were so sore the following night, I still didn't sleep very well. And so I know it delayed me, right? But what do you do? Like I went to bed at my normal time and just laid there, maybe fell asleep, and then woke up and couldn't get back to sleep. And when your legs are sore and you're laying in bed, man, it's hard sometimes to, in retrospect, maybe I should have taken some Tylenol or something. Yeah. That first night. And I think that for my next race, that's what I'm going to do, is I'm going to just have some Tylenol, just to maybe decrease the pain. But honestly, John, I think it was that downhill run, because I don't normally get pain like that. Yeah. Normally I'm just amped up, and I think it might also be just like the amount of caffeine I ingest is significantly higher on a race day. Right. Normally I have 1 cup of caffeinated coffee a day. And I don't know, I tried to actually mitigate it a little bit this time, but I still probably had maybe 3 or 4 cups worth during the race. Yeah, I mean that's triple what you normally would have, and you respond well to caffeine, so that's gonna impact everything as well. Yeah, and I'm a slow metabolizer of caffeine, so it probably has more of a negative effect.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. In the last time I did an Ironman, I think I had 1,000 milligrams of caffeine during the
Wow.
during the day. Well, you think about it, 10 hours, that's only like
That's
100
right.
milligrams an hour. That's not much, really.
No, that's right. That's right. It
And
sounds like a lot, but you're right. You spread it out over that.
I didn't sleep for like 3 days, just, so we'll see on the one coming up. But yeah, so when we talk about sleep hygiene, we do what the athletes that I work with and the students that I teach, we give them some basics that they can work with. And John, one of the things that research kind of shows is it's really hard for people to make change, right? To actually make an actual life change is, some of the research says, well, you need 60 days of consistency to actually make something like a normal part of your life. So one of the strategies is to just add 15 minutes, 15 minutes a night. And so if you add 15 minutes a night, that ends up to like an hour and 45 minutes a week.
Okay.
Which doesn't sound like a lot, but it actually is. And so then you add that, and once that becomes more routine, then you try and add another 15 minutes.
Okay.
The research shows it's really difficult for people to add an hour. Right. And just because their life routine is, it gets in the way.
Sure. Right.
So that's one. And then, some of the people are like, well, I just can't fall asleep. I go to, I'm trying to go to bed earlier, but I just can't fall asleep. And then, so there's some strategies, some very simple strategies in the literature that are pretty much back. There's some good evidence to support them. Number one strategy is to get yourself blue light early in the morning.
Get yourself, say that again?
Get yourself some blue light early in the morning.
Oh, okay. All right.
So number one strategy for sleeping better at night is to get outside early and walk, just go for a walk, 20 minutes. And they actually say to look at the sky. Don't look at the sun, just look at the blue sky.
Right.
And that starts the process of building up something called sleep pressure in your brain. And you can actually start that process early. And then you add that to, in the evening, avoiding blue light. And we're all inundated by blue light. We're inundated by it right now. Although I have a blue light blocker on my screen right now.
Oh, that's good.
But all of the devices, right? The television. Now the switch to LED lights. They might be saving the planet, one light bulb at a time, but they emit a lot of blue light.
That's right.
And fluorescent lights are horrible for blue light. So, I've got, I wear blue light blocking glasses around, usually not till like about 9:30. I should probably put them on earlier, but they look horrible. And,
yeah, right. It's
Cosmo, Cosmo judges me. So, so you want to block the blue light at night because that'll actually stimulate the release of kind of like your sleep hormones.
Yeah.
You want to have it early in the morning to upregulate your awake hormones. So those are like just some very, very simple things that along with consistent timing, will get a lot of people to the point where they can actually increase their sleep.
No, that's great. And you're right. It's the blue light, obviously from our phone, our iPad, our computers, or TVs. And I think a lot of us have gotten in the habit of having those next to our bed. I am guilty of watching a movie, on the phone and then trying to go to bed. And boy, that's just terrible. And so now that's a habit to break. And that's not, like you said, it's not easy to make that change.
But it is easy to put on like the filters, right? So on your phone, you have a filter that it's called Night Shift on iPhone. I don't know what's called on Android. So at least you can do that. That's one step. On the computer, there's a program called f.lux, a free download. That's what I have on this computer right now. That it actually knows where you are in the world and where the sun is and stuff. And so when the sun naturally goes down, it starts to remove the blue light. Oh, neat. Yeah. And so there are things that you can do that are pretty low hanging fruit. The other really low hanging fruit is to avoid caffeine after a certain amount of time, right? So, and it depends. We've talked about caffeine sensitivity on the podcast before, but most of the population are slow metabolizers of caffeine. And so the research in there says you need to avoid caffeine after either noon or 1 o'clock.
Right. No, that's great. And I'll add in one more here. And actually, Bob beat me to it on the naps. He put in, what about naps in the afternoon?
Yeah. So the research is interesting on this one, though, because too long of naps are not good. Right. So have you come across any of the research on the caffeine nap?
No, I haven't.
So this is something that some athletes are doing, where they actually will ingest caffeine right before they have their nap. And then it'll wake them up.
Okay.
They won't allow them to sleep for too long.
Yeah, right.
Because if you actually end up getting into like deep sleep, it could actually decrease your sleep pressure for later in the night.
Yeah.
So the research is kind of showing that 15 to 20 minutes is better than 40 to 60 minutes. Yeah,
and that's what I've heard as well, is that you need to be more alert. You got to allow for that alertness after the nap.
Yeah.
So you avoid that grogginess that would carry over to influence the sleep later on.
And I'll add, even in that nap time, even if you don't fall asleep, like go unconscious, it's still very, very valuable. For basically, for recovery. So in that pyramid, one of the things is what was mental relaxation, right? So actually having points of the day where you can turn off.
Yeah.
Right? So, for me, when I'm at work, like after lunch, sometimes I'll just turn the lights off, sit in my chair, just think, just kind of almost meditate for like 10 minutes.
Yeah. And
it definitely helps me be more productive in the afternoon, but also helps me, I think, sleep a little better later. But that's
good.
Boy, that's really anecdotal.
It's so important, just to have that sleep routine. And like this model shows in this review paper, is maintaining healthy sleep habits. You've got to do this over a long period of time, and then it does become a habit and it becomes part of your routine. Yep. Whereas I think some of us have these poor sleep habits, and therefore it's actually harder to get into a good sleep routine. You've got to break that habit first and foremost. So,
but like I said, break it slowly.
Yeah, I like that 15-minute a night idea. That's good.
So, John, like you and I obviously both, we have a lot of students, and when I talk to my students about this, their biggest problem is this, and I don't think it's just students, it's the social media side, right? They are, and I've fallen into a little bit of this trap sometimes too. You get reading and and then you scroll to the next one and the next one, and next thing you know, it's like, you're an hour past your bedtime or longer. Yeah. I have students that are telling me, like, I said, just be honest, I would just really want to know, they're like 4 hours a night, like from 10 until 2 a.m. on social media. And I don't think it's just my students. I think there's a lot of people in the population that's how they're getting and feeling connection, especially during COVID. Yeah. They were utilizing that for social connection, and it was very negative. The other one is, I'm going to give you a heads up on this one. If you get to the point in Netflix when it says, "Are you still watching?" It's time to go to bed.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. Actually, I don't get to that because it will take me maybe 3 nights, maybe 4 nights to watch a movie, because I never make it longer than, 15 to 30 minutes. So I guess that's a good sign. But
yeah. So it's more that if you're binge watching a series, right? Like it's like show after show. I think it's after 3 or 4 episodes that says, "Are you still there? Are you still watching?" If you get to that point and it's at night, the answer is no, and you go to bed.
That's great. No, I've not reached that. So, but the social media for sure. And I'll actually add in, I guess I would call it work media at that point. Yep. I turn email off. Sorry, I know we're colleagues, but I turn email off after a certain time, because And I try to take Sundays with no email.
Yep.
Because it can, all it takes is that one email that all of a sudden starts the brain working. And if you do that at night, now you're thinking about something, and all of a sudden it's keeping
John,
you up. So
I'll take it a step further. I don't look at my work email on Saturday or Sunday.
yeah.
Unless we're doing an event like on Saturday,
Yeah.
like for work or something like that. But because you're right, it literally just takes one email from one student or one like complaining about something or not happy about something.
Yep.
The weekend emails are never the nice ones, right?
Right.
And they're like, hey, class was great this week. You did such a good job teaching, and I'm really happy. No, you never get those. It's always negative, but it can always wait till Monday.
That's right.
And I think that's important. And we're lucky that we have jobs that are like that. But I know a lot of people work on the weekends, and they have that commitment that they have to have. But I think you're right. Like when it's, you have to set a time. I think like maybe it's 5:30, 6 o'clock, whatever, that the work email goes away, and now you can have your fun email.
Yeah. Well, and to that point, I also, because it is, one hand receiving email, but I try to be aware not to send those emails either.
Yeah.
On a Friday that it's going to cause someone else some
stress over the weekend.
Yeah. So it does work both ways. But
so that's the old mantra in the business world, right? You always fire people on Friday afternoon.
Oh, wow. That's why we're not in the business world.
That's why we're not in the business.
We're academics, so it's a little less cutthroat. It's still cutthroat, but not like that. So
not like that. So the other piece I wanted to add into here is, in that pyramid, it actually said like compression and fads, and so some of the fads, I think work because they allow you to relax. Right. So, for example, we both have utilized compression garments and compression, like Normatex and recovery systems, recovery boots. I actually think one of the benefits of those is it actually allows you to relax.
Yeah, that's right. So it forces you. What you mean is it forces you to stop doing what you're doing. You're not going to go for a run with recovery boots on, because
you're not going to go even like cook dinner or empty the trash or go to the garage and do this, and I forgot about this, and run upstairs. You literally are just sitting still. It's very typical. Like I actually have a really difficult time having a nap. Actually going unconscious. But if I'm in the recovery boots on a Sunday afternoon, I can usually fall asleep.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So I think that a lot of the recovery things come back to, can you actually get the person to relax? Yeah. Or can you relax your body, relax your mind?
I think that's true. And Chris on here also says, huge fan of quick naps after a big run or a big ride, just like you talk about. But I think it's also this part of a belief score. In some of the papers that we read prior to tonight, we're talking about belief score. Do we believe certain things work? And on one hand, we could put that in a category of placebo. And on one hand, you're like, oh, well, maybe that's not, maybe that makes the product not as effective. But boy, I tell you, if you believe it works and you get a positive benefit out of it, I'm okay with that. That's
well, and some of the thing is some of the metrics that we're using to measure if some of these recovery things work are not necessarily, they may work, but they may not work the way we think they work.
That's an excellent point. That is really good.
Yeah. So, John, oh my gosh, we went to almost an hour and we only got to sleep.
Yeah.
We'll tackle cold water immersion next time. This was great, though. I think that we really emphasized the primacy of this. And for those of you that are going to join me for my the ride on Sunday, it's whenever I wake up.
Yeah, there you go.
Get out there. Like honestly, I do not like meeting people for a ride on a Sunday. Yeah. And it's not that I don't like riding with people. Right. It's that I don't like that stress of, hey, we're meeting at 7, because then I have to set an alarm. And honestly, setting alarm for me is actually stressful, because then I'm like, is it going to go off? Is it going to work? Right. And I don't sleep as well if I have to be somewhere early in the morning. No, that's a great point. And even, Laura and I, we both go through this, is that if you have
a big day ahead of you, exercise wise, even though it's just training, it can impact our sleep because you're thinking about, well, did I pack everything? What time do I need to get up? How do I, that in itself can cause some anxiety, which keeps you up. I often think of it as, well, at least I'm prepping myself for what it's like race night, that's at least how I try to justify it. So,
but if the justify is you didn't recover from the,
yeah, that's right.
You think you can justify it to yourself, but I still don't think it works.
No, I believe me, I wish I could sleep when I want to be able to sleep. It's
I really wish, honestly, like if I could make a magic thing, there'd be a switch. You could just turn that switch at 10, turn it on at 6, sleep, awake.
Yeah,
we're good. But that's not how life works.
Well, this is going to lead us into having to talk about jet lag at some point.
Yes. Maybe when we start traveling again.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, we can save that for a little bit.
Yeah.
Because even the races now that we really have, you're driving to California, right? You're driving?
I'm flying.
Oh, you're flying. Okay.
Just to relieve one more piece of stress.
It's an hour, right?
Flight? Yeah, it's an hour flight, and I have somebody else bringing my bike.
Yeah. So really the travel that we have is within one time zone.
Yeah.
Driving up to St. George is,
actually
that's a different time zone.
It's funny, right? Because that 1 hour difference did mess with me.
It did. Yes. That's funny that you say that, because you're right. It does actually change, the morning and the evening.
Yep. Yeah. So, the trick with that one was, could you try and keep your brain on your normal time zone?
Mm-hmm.
We were kind of fortunate that race didn't start very early.
No.
Right. So that made it a little bit easier, but the spring race will probably start at 6.
Yeah.
So speaking of the spring race, John, some crazy stuff this week or yesterday with the spring Ironman in St. George. So you and I had both already signed up for the Ironman St. George. I think you, as well as I, were looking at it for a qualifier.
I was. That's right. It still is, though.
I know, but that was my plan was, that was the race for me to qualify. I think you did the same thing. Now I'm like, well, I guess we should tell people, if you don't know, that the World Championship, the Ironman World Championship for 2021 was supposed to be in Kona in 2 weeks. Got moved to Kona in February.
Yep. And
on just yesterday, they decided they were moving it to St. George in May. So it'll be the 2021 World Championship in May in St. George. And if you'd already signed up for the St. George race, congratulations, you are going to be racing the World Championship along with people that had already planned on being in the 2021 race. So yeah, that was a huge surprise for us, and I was thrilled. I was over the moon. I know some people were not too happy with it, but for me, like we're talking about, it's a 2-hour drive away. We were going anyways. We both love St. George.
Yep.
I love the community. They are so behind Ironman. Everywhere I went in St. George, we're at Culver's, like 3 people. Hey, are you racing the Ironman? Yeah, we are.
That's great.
Or the next day, I was at Culver's again, getting more custard. Did you race the Ironman? Can't you tell by the way I can't walk? Of course I race Ironman. But I love the fact the community is so behind it. But in some ways, I also was a little bit disappointed because, yes, it's still a qualifier for 2022. But I think it's going to be a lot harder to qualify now.
It could be, and it's going to be interesting to see how this dynamic works out. But like you, I saw the switch, and my first reaction was, oh, that's going to be cool.
Yeah.
Again, with this idea that we get to share this area with people from around the world.
Yeah, share it with the world. Yeah.
There will be, a new experience for them. But then I did pause and I said, because they gave us about 10 other options to switch to another race. And then I started thinking, well, if I was going to try to qualify, just like you're saying now, maybe this is not the race to try to qualify. One, I wasn't sure they were going to have spots, but then I had to go back and reread the message, and they did. So I started looking at Alaska. I started looking at Lake Placid, maybe Maryland. But then at the end of the day, I went through it and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to stick with St. George. It's, in our backyard. It gives us a chance to practice on the course.
Yeah. And we were going to do the race anyways.
We were
Like,
going to do the race anyhow. And
what difference does it make? My time is going to be the same no matter what.
I think the dynamics of qualifying, what may happen is a number of people who are going to go in May in St. George may have already qualified for the October 2022. So they may be double dipping, if you will. And so in essence, it may still be a normal qualifying race. It's not like you're trying to qualify at a world championship. So,
and in my mind as well, John, it's like, I just wanted to race the Ironman World Championship just one time.
Oh, nice.
I don't really care to go to Kona. I really don't. I know you've been, but like for me, hot, windy, humid, expensive.
Yeah.
Right. Instead of going to Kona, I could buy a new bike. I literally could.
Oh.
Right. So honestly, for me, if I end up qualifying out of there, I'll still go to Kona. But honestly, this will scratch that itch for me. Like I really think that I'm good because
we're going to get some good gear.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah.
And I mean, you probably already have your campsite booked. I got my Airbnb booked.
The campsite's going to be a little trickier because I've already tried to get it, and they are actually saving all the spots for Ironman staff. So that's so now I got to join the Ironman staff. So
yeah. Or I mean, I think we could still get your trailer in our driveway of our Airbnb.
That's right. I could go to another campsite. The Quail Creek is going to be open. There's a couple others up there to be able to go. So, but yeah, they really do need that space, and I get it because even for the 70.3, the volunteers were coming in and parking in the campsites there, which made a lot of sense because where else are they going to park? And so they do need the space for the staff to do what they need to do. And boy, I tell you, they did a great job. Volunteers, organization, it's just amazing pulling off that a 70.3 event. Now to pull off a full is just going to be pretty tremendous, but they did a great job.
No, John, to me, the volunteers at that race went above and beyond.
Yeah.
Especially because of the conditions.
Yeah.
When it was really bad and I got to an aid station, they were still,
they were there.
Like I would have been like, see ya, I'm volunteering, I'm out of here.
That's right.
They
were having a great time.
They really were. And at no point did I get to an aid station and they didn't have what I wanted.
Yep.
Right. There was always, water, ice, Gatorade, whatever I wanted was right there. It was. And I don't know. I haven't talked to anybody. Have you talked to somebody that finished late if they ran out of stuff or?
Nothing, but I know on the bike, I was picking up water that was ice cold. And I'm like, I actually need to warm up right now. So they were ready for a hot day as well from the get-go. So,
it's funny on the first aid station, the wind hadn't hit me yet. Yeah. I was like, okay, normally the first aid station, I would grab a water, pour it down my back, drink a little, throw it away. I did that. Yeah. And then we hit that turn, and within, 5 minutes, the wind started going. Yeah. And I was like, oh man, I'm getting cold.
I thought it was going to snow at one point, to tell you the truth. So it was really, the weather was just, it was just a real quick change. And we've seen those types of storms, here in Vegas as well, where all of a sudden it just, whips up and drops a lot of rain, but over in one area. And that's why flash flooding is such a big problem around here, because you may not even see the storm, but you may see the after effect of it. So
yeah. Like how often does it like rain on my side of town and I'll talk to you and
did
you get that rain? No, didn't even know.
I was on a call last week and that's exactly what happened. Was someone was saying, oh, it's raining. I'm like looking out and it's beautiful and sunny right here. So
all right, John. Well, hey, we're gonna hit cold water immersion next time. We got a lot of topics ahead of us. This is good. It's the big part of the year for triathlon. A lot of stuff going on. We got Chattanooga this weekend. What else is this weekend?
The Odyssey Swim Run, we've sent
Oh,
a
yeah.
couple athletes up there. So T and Steph are doing that. We've got a few people at Chattanooga, Paul, Ken, and is it Mike? Yeah, Mike is there. And there's one more race that I'm drawing a blank on that people are at Chad's.
We're in the middle of it right now. If you think about it, because all these races were postponed and moved, and it's like every weekend there's multiple races. Oh, and Malibu is this weekend.
And Cozumel 70.3.
Do you know anyone at Malibu?
No,
weekend?
I don't.
So Malibu is, if anyone wants to see something really cool, that's the final for the what's the sprint one called? The Super League.
Super League.
Super League final is in Malibu.
Oh, cool.
So it was 3 races in Europe, and now the final is in Malibu this weekend. And they've been putting their races on YouTube.
Oh, cool.
If you want to watch that. So that series, I've actually watched all 3. Actually, the last one, they only had highlights on YouTube, but it's super exciting racing. And, we were talking about the club, like doing something fun. Maybe we do something like that where we actually do, 3 swim bike runs back to back to back to back.
I like that. And I like the idea of trying to do some type of mixed relay thing too. We've got to do a test event like that. And Bob is reminding us BBSC Las Vegas try next weekend. So
I'm on the fence if I'm going to race.
Oh, I signed up because it's senior games too. So
well, I'm not a senior yet.
I know I am.
Next year I am. This will be the last year of not being in the senior games. I can't decide, because the Ironman in California is 4 weeks from this weekend,
right.
Whether it would be in my best interest or not to do if I do, I'll do a sprint race. Is that what you're signed up for?
Yep.
Well, then I'm going to do it, just to race.
Oh, there you go. Let's do it. That'll be fun.
All right, John. Well, have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too. We'll talk soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
All right, bye.